Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another incredible guest, man. I love interviewing and just associating with these incredible people who have accomplished incredible things and have become really, in a lot of cases, more than they dreamed of initially, but are not anywhere close to what their current dreams are. And that's such a unique, beautiful thing in the entrepreneurial world that and legacy building world, that it starts out small. We start to get a taste for what we can actually accomplish. And then we start blowing up like, well, what if we really went for it? And that builds as we believe more in ourselves and others. So our guest today, his name is Andy Hite. He's out of the Windy City, Chicago. He says it's hot there, 101 degrees today, which is, it's not cold, that's for sure. But Andy Hite is a recognized leadership coach who supports entrepreneurs, executives, and their teams as they navigate the world of building lives and building businesses filled with prosperity, meaning, and freedom. So that's who he is. But I'm actually going to let him introduce kind of how he got to who he is, because that's what's really important here is where do we start? Many of you listening, you're starting, or maybe you're thinking of starting. Maybe you're a year, 2, 3, 4, 10 years into your journey, but are you 40 years? Are you 50 years? And what does that look like? I'm not saying he's that far in. Maybe he is, maybe he's not.
God, I hope not.
But here's the thing. I used to think that 30 years old was old. And then guess what? 30 years old is not old. And so it's like, it keeps getting, maybe I'm still young. Maybe I'm still young, because I still feel like I'm 18. And I'm sure you probably still feel very similar, like a young child. And you're like, wait, that's not how it works. So talk to us about when you were a young child. Talk to us about how you got to where you are. Why are you so passionate about helping the next generation of individuals become their best selves?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll be 50 next year, which is crazy. I used to think that was ancient. And I'm like you, man. I feel like I'm 18. So like they're just not congruent. My brain, my body sometimes feels like it's 50, but my brain and especially sense of humor is much younger. But yeah, so like I grew up in rural Virginia, really tight-knit family. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was a builder. And so I kind of grew up in the entrepreneurial world. He was really into teaching me how to be a good young man, how to have a good work ethic. So I started working with him when I was 12, like cleaning up job sites, cleaning paint buckets, anything I could do. I remember, God, this does date me, but my first paycheck was $1. Right. But grew up there, pretty easy for the most part, childhood. My dad and mom were awesome to us. They were very attentive. Probably the darker side of my childhood was growing up in a rural area and being an Asian American kid. I looked different and people let me know it. I was bullied quite a bit, which I think, we might get into it as the conversation goes on, which was very formative for me. It sucked back then. It was really hard. It made me feel like a piece of shit. Felt like I was outside the group, didn't belong. But in retrospect, when we fast forward 30 years, I realized that was among my greatest gifts. But, growing up, working in an entrepreneurial blue collar family, my dad was also a singer. So I did that for quite a while. Theater was my thing. I got a music education degree. And my first real foray in the professional world was in theater. I was an actor for about 5 years, a professional union actor in Chicago, and then started producing theater, which I did for about 15 years, which was crazy because that was like unlike anything else. It was a Fortune 100 company that owned it, but we had to operate almost entrepreneurially. So I kind of had this unique exposure to being an entrepreneur and corporate America, which I hated in the moment, but boy, did it help me today. Probably the formative stuff was I always felt like, and it probably came from like being bullied and that kind of thing. I always felt like, man, I'm made for more. Why can't I get there? What is it that I'm not able to feel like I'm reaching my potential? I remember once calling a therapist because I was just a mess saying, can you help me? I know that I have more in me, but I don't know how to realize it. But I was an actor and I had no money and no insurance really. So I couldn't really afford it. So I remember opening a book that was gifted to me in my graduation in high school. It sat on a dusty shelf for 5 years. It was called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. You know that book?
Good one.
That book changed my life, man. It really kind of gave me some altitude on who we are as people, who I am as a person, and gave me some altitude to think there might be a different way. And that book kind of created this insatiable hunger for self-development, professional development that's been there since the last 30 years. And so through that, I've really started working on myself and asking myself the powerful questions. How do I create myself into someone that wakes up in the morning excited and goes to bed at night fulfilled? And quite frankly, man, that's been a lifelong journey thus far in answering those questions and creating that growth. A little bit like, so this hunger for personal and professional development introduced me to coaching. I started working with a coach maybe 7 years ago. And while I'd been in therapy and gotten some results, the world of coaching, like, again, took me to another level. It helped transform me in ways that I didn't know that was possible. And that got me on the journey where I am today as a leadership coach, as an entrepreneur coach, because they, a little bit differently than therapy, ask questions that, you know, the title of your podcast is Fuel Your Legacy. You know, therapy often is like, how do we heal you so that you can show up today meaningfully? But coaching is like, how do we go create a legacy? How do we create something that you'll be super proud of and that you feel fulfilled in and that you're realizing your potential? And so that really got me super excited and jazzed. And it sent me off on this path to where I am today, sitting with you on this awesome podcast and talking about like self-development and professional development and coaching and how do we create ourselves into being someone we're really proud of and create a legacy that someday when we move on to whatever the next realm is, people remember us. We've left a mark.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And just want to highlight this. You recently have gone through an evolution in your coaching where it used to be more about you over the last 6 years. Now you're moving into a bigger vision. What's that bigger vision? What's the next thing for you? Obviously you had Andy Hite coaching before, but where are you headed now?
Yeah, when we started, man, I just wanted a client, right? And I wasn't thinking about like a brand, a legacy. I was thinking about, because I left my previous career, I literally cut the cord. I burnt the bridges. And went from nice salary, benefits, travel expenses, and that kind of thing to a big donut. So I was just concerned with how do I pay the mortgage this month? So I got on, I bought andyhitecoaching.com, put together a little website, and then just set about like creating something. Well, over the course of a couple of years, we started creating, I started creating something kind of meaningful. And what I discovered was working with my current coach. I want to create something where I actually make an impact. You know, we have a current mission of impacting 1 million lives. And that's probably not going to happen with just me working with people one-on-one. Could, but so we've been working to grow this a little bit, have some contract coaches so that we can touch more people with the mission. And so I realized we got to go beyond Andy Hite and really move into something that is more of a scalable brand. So now we're scalingminds.com. How do we scale people's minds and hearts so that they can go create the thing that they want? So yeah, thanks for asking. We're now scaling minds and onto a bigger mission and bigger vision on how we can leave this little rock better than we arrived on it.
Sure. Yeah. And one of the things that I like about Russell Brunson, in his Expert Secrets book that he talks about, he says your brand has to be or like, not really the brand, but like your identity of what's happening. So it was ClickFunnels, right? So ClickFunnels was Russell Brunson's thing, but that was just the name of the company. But when he's creating branding, he wanted to create something that everybody could be a part of. And so his phrase is funnel hacker, right? So that's something you wear on your shoulder or on your sleeve and say, I am one of these people. I'm part of this group of individuals who is this, right? And so Andy Hite coaching, you could work for Andy Hite coaching. You could do Andy Hite coaching, whatever. But at the end of the day, scaling minds, that's something that anybody can be part of. Anybody can scale a mind. Anybody, even if you're just starting in your journey, you probably still know more. You're probably farther along than the person behind you. So you can help scale somebody else's mind, and you can be actively scaling your own mind. And so I like the new branding. I like where that's going.
Thanks, man.
And to see where that leads to, because I think it's really important to add that element in to your future.
Yeah, we really wanted something that not only talked about what we did, but that showed someone that came to our site or talking to like the possibility of what we do. Like not just growing, but scaling, right? Because I think that's what transformation's all about. We can read a book or something like that and grow, but we're all about transforming who we are so that we can make a bigger mark on the world and in our lives and the lives of the people we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to dig into this because I know I've got tons of questions here and I'm excited. If you have questions on Facebook, type them in the chat or in the comments there. Maybe we'll get them answered while we're still live. If not, we'll get them answered after. But you can always catch the second half of this interview on the Fuel Your Legacy episode on anywhere you listen to podcasts. But let's get into this. So you start out as a young boy and your dad is a builder entrepreneur. What does your mom do? How many children do you have in your siblings?
Oh, great. So mom, she sold insurance forever. And then when they started to have kids, they have lots of family values and really wanted mom to be at home. Dad and mom both wanted that. So mom was homemaker. She took care of us. She's a large part of who I am today. I have an older sister who is still living in hometown next to mom and dad. But yeah, mom was like, dude, she's like my best friend, my caretaker, the one that kept me on the straight and narrow when I wanted to like veer left and right.
That's 100%. Awesome.
Yeah,
no, that's good. I think that's an important aspect of having, what does that early life look like? So many people they think that they have a different life. And it sounds like you had a pretty decent upbringing, which is wonderful on both sides.
Man, I won the lottery when it came to parents. Like I don't take that for granted. Both super loving, super invested. My dad truly was my hero and still is. I just have never really met someone more generous and caring and giving and also stern. He was a drill sergeant in Vietnam. So yeah, like I won the lottery there. My kids, my family right now, we're so blessed currently with our family unit. And we owe it so much to how my parents and my wife's parents taught us how to develop a family and to be parents.
So talk to me about this a little bit. you brought up kind of two separate personality types, like drill sergeant, but also the most kind, loving, giving, caring, generous person out there. How do you marry those or merge those? What did you learn from your dad as far as how to be an effective parent, but really how to be an effective leader, of still maintaining high standards, high expectations, not letting somebody sell themselves short or do a poor job, but also have that caring, loving, generous, charitable nature about them? How did they manage to balance that?
Such a good question. I mean, such a good question. Oftentimes I will make parallels between parenting and leadership because I think in many ways they are linked. And like with my dad, who could be a drill sergeant, could be tough, could really hold you to task if that's what was needed, and be this soft guy who loved you. Like, that's what I think leadership is. I don't think that, we and I think this is transitioning now, but we used to think leadership, a good leader is charismatic and commanding and stern when need be. But a good leader is also soft and empathetic and vulnerable and caring. That's what leadership is. And, it's really so interesting. I can't believe that I've never connected the dots here, but I've never really thought of my dad as a leader in that way, but you just did that for me. That is where I learned cool, really good, meaningful leadership, where, I think good leadership is whatever's called for in the moment, right? Sometimes it is a stern hand, and sometimes it is a shoulder to cry on. And so I think those of us, and this is what I work with clients all the time, is let's let go of any preconceived notions of what leadership is. And let's find out what that means to you. What is the authentic version of you that is stern and strict and commanding? And also, what is the authentic version of you that is vulnerable and empathetic? Because that's when good leaders show up and are powerful with their people. And I think that is truly good parenting, and what I never quite connected, but you helped me connect in my dad.
Hey, well, I'm honored to be the one who helped you connect.
I mean, truly, I can't believe that never occurred to me, but that's who he was.
Yeah, well, I think that I know for me, I've learned so much from my parents, both things that I liked and things that I didn't like about leadership. And for a lot of my childhood, I didn't understand what was going on. As an adult, I became a parent, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing as a parent, right? Once you become a parent, you have a lot more grace for your parents. But I turned around, I called my parents, I was like, what were you thinking? I'm the seventh of 11 kids, right? Before you started having children, what was your plan? And they said, well, we wanted to have independent children who could provide for themselves and operate in the world, everything, by the time they were 14 years old. And now suddenly all of my life makes sense because I was freaking ridden hard. There was no easy way out. Everything was, in my opinion, very, very hard. I was working full time in a honey extracting plant when I was 11. And we were just I worked. That was the thing. We were homeschooled. So there was a little bit of schoolwork, but there was a lot of work and there was a lot of responsibility. And growing up, I almost resented that until I got married. Now I have my own kids. I'm like, wow, I've been an adult for a really long time because that's what I was trained to be, and now I really appreciate, I'm the seventh, my parents, they stuck to it through all the hard times. I had 3 kids. I'm like, dude, there's no way 7 kids in, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to give up probably because that's a long time to be committed to something. And I'm the 7th kid and they were committed. I would say they were really committed all the way to the 10th, the 11th, not so much, and there's psychological issues there because of that. But 10 kids in, 20 plus years, 30 plus years of constant parenting to a specific end to create productive leaders. I just think it's incredible. So anyway. I
think it's incredible. And talk about being the middle kid, right? It's one thing to be the middle kid of 3, but to be the middle kid of 11.
Yeah, it's
I'd love to unpack that one day over a beer.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this next stage though, what you talked about. Yeah, we're gonna skip past that one. So we're gonna talk about an Asian American kind of growing up getting bullied. So I think what we consider bullying today, and I'm not justifying bullying, okay? So don't take this the wrong way. It's like Sam's advocating for more bullying. No, I'm not, okay? I do believe that in our current society, we mistake normal life as bullying, and as a result of that, we try and pad ourselves against hardship, against reality, against just truth talk to some people. And they take it as bullying and they get their feelings hurt, rather than, as you said, some of these experiences are the most transformative, the most beneficial, and have created you who you are. I would say the same for myself. Some of the hardest things I went through as a child from peers or from my parents have developed me into the strength of a human that I am today. And I don't know where I would be without those things. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I wish anybody went through the crap that I went through, so it's this delicate balance. But talk to us about that. What do you feel like you learned from being bullied that really has stuck with you and helped you become a more influential and effective leader today?
Yeah. Great question. I don't know that I learned much from being bullied. It's what came after. You and I were talking before the episode started, which is, what questions do you ask yourself as a person to help you grow? That's where my growth came. The result of being bullied and getting in all those fights and getting beat up, and I won a couple, Sam.
I won a couple.
I won a couple. For all you bullies out there that remember me. But it was the questions of, like, I'm left with these feelings of being less than, undeserving, unloved, a piece of crap, right? And then the question is like, well, is that true? Is this belief that I have true? And then it put me on this journey of like self-discovery. Well, I don't think that it's true. So then if that's not true, what is? I truly would not be sitting here with you today had that not happened. I don't think that I would have the thirst to really know who I was if it wasn't programmed into me that I was believing something that was untrue, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so, and this is a very, Carol Dweck growth mindset thing. Like, all things, if we choose, and this is a choice, to look at it and see what is the silver lining in this. Like, I really do choose to see it that way. It awoken and gave me the opportunity to look deeper that I otherwise might not have. To look deeper into not what are the beliefs that I'm believing now, but what are the empowering beliefs that I could believe that would get me to the thing that I want to create. Who can I be outside of what some 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds wanted me to believe that I was. And that really was the true gift that keeps paying dividends today, is continuing to look deeper into not who do I think I am, but who do I have the possibility to become with more and more exploration and work.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. And I want to dig into it a little bit even more. So the question that you asked yourself, or the way you phrased what bullying did for you, rather, is that created a catalyst for a result to happen. There's a phrase, you probably all know it. If you haven't, write it down, because it's, in my opinion, it's as true can be. But tough times make strong people make good times make weak people. I think we're in the weak people stage of society. Okay. I think that we eliminated tough times, and we say tough times, well, they shouldn't exist. Well, if you go back, millions, thousands of years, tough times existed. It wasn't like, well, I don't like the way you're looking at me. Look, it's a freaking lion and they're going to tear your head off. Okay. You got to figure out, you got to think, am I weaker than that lion, or is that lion weaker than me? That's a conversation that people had to have on a daily basis. Is this winter storm going to kill me, or am I going to survive? Like, those survivor conversations need to happen in our lives. And I think they produce the strongest leaders and the strongest followers. The most productive people come from survivor type conversations. I wasn't bullied because of my race or anything like that, but I was bullied a lot for being homeschooled, which isn't, I'm not going to pretend it's necessarily equivalent. My parents could have chosen whether to homeschool me or not homeschool me, right? You couldn't have chosen to be Asian or not. Not that I know of yet. But who knows?
We could talk cosmically,
Yeah, well, cosmically, or you just decide you're some other race at this point in the world. But the point is, those are things that there are controllables. But I definitely remember a lot of my childhood being homeschooled, being the kid who didn't know how to socialize, being all that. I got made fun of all the time. And I love the question that you took out of that. Hey, is my low self-confidence true or not? And if it's not true, then what is true? And that's a question that's not just for a child to ask, but most adults have that childhood trauma that they've never asked that question.
Yeah.
If my lack of belief in my ability isn't true, because there's enough examples in society that say it's not true, then what could be true? Like, what's possible if, that's such an important question to ask. And I really wanted to highlight it because if you can be an effective leader to help other people ask that question without bullying them, right? Get them into that mindset without the negative thing. So talk to me about that as an entrepreneur, coach, leader. How do you help somebody enter into that frame of mind where they're focused on answering that question without having the catalyst of like having to answer the question? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally do. And really good segue. You're good at this, man. So here's the thing. Not everybody needs to grow. Not everybody wants to grow. But I think there are those that have that itch. They don't really know what to scratch, but they have that itch. I have potential, but I don't know what to do. And I'm really there for those leaders, those businesses, those individuals that have that itch, because man, we can help those people see possibility. Possibility is like one of my favorite words of all time, because if we are curious enough, we can ask the questions enough that can open up like almost infinite doors to create anything. And so to answer your question, people that come to me usually are the ones that have the itch.
It's breaking up. Oh no. It broke up there a little bit.
We're back.
We're back, baby. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So yeah.
No worries. I was on a rant, and then I started to think, man, Sam has amazing eye contact because you just didn't move. And then I thought, thumbs up.
Yeah, no. Oh, so just start back over at answering that question. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Hey, we just roll with the punches, right?
That's right.
No, basically, I was talking about like possibility, and everyone has the option and opportunity to explore that if they want. I really do believe not everybody in this lifetime is going to necessarily want to grow in the same way that I think you and I are talking about it. But for those that do have an itch, that are curious about what else is possible, that, I was talking to an entrepreneur this morning, and it really came down to, he's like, I think the thing that I'm really feeling is I know I'm made for more, and I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know where to begin. But I'm curious and I'm willing to like dive in and do the work. And that's typically the kind of person that comes to me, right? Is like, hey, I know that this business can work. I know that my team or my leadership can really create something cool. I just don't know the right question. Back to your thing is like, what are the right questions to ask? That's what we do. And we dive in and getting more and more altitude so that people can like see with perspective where they are and then where they want to go and how to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the phrase, I guess, stories, analogies that I use to talking about altitude, you use for altitude like an airplane. I think that a lot of people, and this is not a racist reference, so don't take this the wrong way. No, I'm just kidding. But, like they have, you see these Asian cultures, they're actually incredible. They're able to carry these massive packages on their back and walk. I don't know how they do it. I want to go and figure it out and spend time with them.
I see them when I'm scrolling TikTok, they're out in the forest and they're like building something.
Yeah. It's like, how are you doing this? I actually don't know how, but the point is, if you look at them, they're bent like almost completely over and it's resting on their back. Well, the problem is you get 12, 30, 40, 1,000, 2,000, 100,000, 300 million, whatever people walking in a line doing this grind they're carrying the load of life on their back, and they're incredible. They're freaking amazing at it. And they think the only solution is to keep doing this. Well, the problem is you get that big of a line, you start building a rut, and pretty soon you're walking through a muddy slog that everybody else is walking through. And it was a green field. It was a beautiful green field in the beginning. Now it's a trench of mud, and people feel stuck, and they don't understand that they could just like put that crap off on the side and look up and see if they would just go 2 or 3 steps over, 2 or 3 steps to the right, 2 or 3 steps to the left, maybe do a whole horizontal and go a complete different direction. They can still carry the same load, but on solid ground rather than the same freaking way that everybody else is doing it.
Yep.
And it's just perspective. So you say altitude, I say this analogy that I don't know.
Awesome.
For me, it's how I view my life. Like I like the struggle. Another analogy that I love is I love the feeling of just about drowning. Right? I love.
Say more about that, Sam.
Like when I'm up on the ground, I get a little overconfident. I get too confident in my own ability. But when I'm like sucking air, like I've got to get up to the surface, then I'm fighting and I'm praying. I'm like, hey, I need help. I need anybody to help me. And when you're in that position where you're in the mindset of, I need anybody to help me do this, you start getting resourceful. When you think you've got everything going on, you don't need to be resourceful. You think you got it. And that's a dangerous spot, especially as an entrepreneur, because you stop looking for solutions to grow. And so I like the feeling of being just about drowned.
Mm. It's interesting you say that. I'm working with my coach on a version of that very thing.
Don't steal my idea now. No,
I'm not, no, but she's trying to help me succeed at a very high level without needing to get to the drowning, because I do that same cycle. Super succeed, go back down, and then I don't know if it's a subconscious thing. Sure. Like I thrive better when I feel like I got to pull this cart uphill and get resourceful. But we're working on how do we maintain the high level of performance without having to get to the system draining drowning.
So what's interesting is what's causing the drowning? And this is fascinating. Is causing the drowning because you haven't figured out how to stay up and down, like, because you're so like you succeeded and then you plummet and nosedive because your thermostat's going down. Is that what's causing the drowning? Or is what's causing the drowning, you get a bigger pool, more water. And so the only way to keep going is to keep rising with the tide?
It's a really good question. I think for me, and we're dissecting it literally in coaching and my sessions right now, I think it's maybe a combination of the two. Partly for me too is because of my background, because of how I've built myself up to this point, it's been a little bit more of that almost reactive tendency of putting myself in the stressful situations to achieve the results rather than, I see it in my kids right now. They're procrastinators and they're like, I just work better under pressure. And I'm like, no, there's got to be a better way. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I see this a lot in my clients. I have some clients that they're either controlling with themselves or the team, or they're perfectionists with themselves and the team, you name it. And we'll start to work on it and they'll be on camera and they'll be like, dude, why would I let you take this away from me? This is my secret. This is how I've succeeded. And I had to convince them, like, let go finger by finger, because there's a better way. There's an easier way, and a way that you can actually get to that success, those results faster if we let go of that grip.
Not only faster, but you actually feel better about it at the end of it. Like you feel better, you feel more relaxed. You're actually able to enjoy the destination rather than like, crap, I got here. Now I need to take a break. And so it's like this deep relaxation. It's so fascinating that people think relaxation is actually relaxing. Relaxing is probably like one of the most stressful things you can do, is like trying to get your body to relax. But once you are in relaxed, a lot of people will go throw their body right back into like hyper stress. What if you could operate from a relaxed state though? You'd be better. You'd be more rejuvenated. You'd be more prepared. You'd be more agile. You'd be able to adjust better. You'd be less stressed, less angry when things don't go your way. Everything, if you were able to just operate in the relaxed state rather than the high tension state. So that is going to end for the Facebook viewers. So if you guys are interested in hearing the rest of this conversation, I'm going to see if I can get him to sing. He doesn't know that, but if you guys want to hear it, you better go listen to the podcast, right? And then we've got some other questions here that are going to be huge about the difference between therapy and coaching, because not that one is better than the other, but we got some questions there. So
great question.
If you guys want to see that on the rest of the podcast, then you'll go to samknickerbocker.com. You can listen to it there, or you can find Fuel Your Legacy show on any podcasting app. So have a wonderful day. Okay, so we're back in still. I want to hear about in theater, the So what got you into theater initially? Like, what was it that like, okay, I think this is an avenue, because that's a long years, like 15 years of your life. You spent time in this area and in this arena, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
What drove that?
I touched on it ever so slightly. My dad was a singer when I was a young kid. And so I really got into, I mean, I remember being 5 years old, like on stage with him, like holding his hand. They give me a dummy mic because the audience thought it was cute. I was a singer like from the time I was 4 until 2002 when I retired. And so I, through that, really got into theater in high school and college. It was my outlet. It was my therapy. It was the way I processed emotion. And in retrospect, it's what taught me how to read people, how to look to the humanity of people through like the study of scripts and that kind of thing. But moved to Chicago after college to pursue an acting career. And I worked here for about 5 or 6 years as a union actor, mostly in musical theater. And then I realized, because I was always doing entrepreneurial things on the side, I couldn't let it go, that I needed something more than just being on stage. And so I started working in a theater, producing, and I was artistic director of this theater for 15 years. And that's really what my world was about, like working with artists and creating art. That's where I learned leadership. That's where I learned, and I'll say learning leadership and business the wrong way. It was not a great leadership environment. It was not a great culture environment. And that's really what taught me to get curious. Again, ask questions. If I don't like what I have, what are the questions to ask, and where are the resources to or to move in a different direction? That's what taught me what leadership all is, was living in an environment where the leadership sucked.
Yeah, kind of like your childhood, being bullied.
Exactly.
This other thing. So I want to dig into this. There's a few directions I want to go, and hopefully we have time. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to try and add value here. But I do a lot of public speaking. I love public speaking. I think it's honestly my most passionate thing that I do in my life is performance. And I view public speaking at business conferences, whatever, as performance. I don't view it as work, although it certainly brings in a decent income, but it's performance. And I love every aspect of it.
Me too.
Before I did that, I did door-to-door sales. And so there's some things that I learned. I was just talking to my wife about this last night, that I've learned to be agile and deal with adjusting circumstances. Like, you don't know if that person's going to come to the door with a baby, if the baby's sleeping, or if it's a dog, an attack dog coming out, or if it's a guy with a gun. Like, you just don't know what's coming. I'm being serious. This is how it all happens.
No, it's true. 100%.
You have no idea. You have to be able to read somebody, like you mentioned, in less than, really milliseconds.
Nanoseconds,
And adjust how you're going to approach that conversation on that. And you also really don't have any time to display lack of confidence. You have to be confident. And so I'm wondering, the things that you learned from acting and singing, and I don't know if it's you, or maybe you can experience this, or maybe you know other people, if it wasn't you, that were just, they never became great because they never chose to just do what they were doing with confidence, even if it was the wrong words, even if they sucked, even if they were just making a complete fool of themselves. The difference between somebody making a fool of themselves and somebody being a world-class actor, in my mind, is one person doesn't care if he's being a fool. The other person cares. There you go. You're a fool now. It's about a mindset. So anyways, I want to talk about this a little bit.
I love the question. And this is kind of in some ways how I got into coaching. So one of the things that I did was I coached actors. And many were just wanting to break into the business, or like take their career from like just regional to Broadway or something like that. And exactly what you're saying. The thing that I learned in coaching those actors was the thing that made one successful over another is they could get out of their head and stop believing the stories that were happening in real time, and just be present and do the thing, right?
So I want you to re-say that though, because that's like what does that even mean? You stop believing the stories that are happening in real time. They're stories that are actively happening. And so you have to like separate yourself from what's actively happening and be present, which sounds like the same thing, but make the distinction because people need to understand the distinction.
Well, and like entrepreneurs that might be listening, or anybody, leaders, you know, if you're having a sales call, or if you're talking to an employee or your boss, we tend to have stories around what that interaction means. We put meaning around it. If we have low confidence, we're going to like shrink a little bit. We're going to be a little fearful. We're going to like demur. We're going to have all these things that are stories running in the background that aren't true. And so if we can, and again, going back to your really smart thing of what questions do we ask? If we ask the questions of, oh, I'm having this thought or I'm having this feeling, is it true? No. Then become present in the moment. And for those actors, it's just like talk to your scene partner, do the monologue, stop thinking about what the people behind the table are thinking or wanting, and just do your art. You know, in business, stop thinking about what you think the boss is going to do, say, or is thinking. Stop thinking if the sale's going to happen or not, and just be there. When that can happen, literally, there's just this cosmic thing that opens up. And then we connect with the person, not the stories that are playing in the background. And that's a lot of what we do in coaching is we kind of dispel all the things that we think with what is true so that we can let go of the limiting beliefs and the ideas and things that were programmed into us as a bullied 10-year-old or whatever, to what is actually possible and true right now. Then the whole world opens up.
And what's interesting is you're using the word true a lot, which I appreciate. But for me, I have a definition that I want to at least float to you, and you can tell me whether you agree with it or not. But I think some people, they think true means what they perceive in their reality. And that's what's true, right? So my child is screaming. So it's true that he's screaming. I don't actually think that that's the true that I would want to live by. The truth is what's possible if, and as we create the true, then that becomes different. The screaming no longer becomes my child screaming. The screaming becomes my child's communicating to me. Mm-hmm. And the truth is he's trying to communicate and he doesn't know how. That's the truth. The fact that he's screaming, that's a result, just like you said, the result of the bullying was a great thing. The result is he's trying to communicate. He doesn't know how. So what's true is he's trying to communicate. He doesn't know how. The result is he's crying or screaming at me. And we get frustrated at the screaming and we get caught up in the story that's actively happening of the screaming. And we forget that if we were present, we would understand he's trying to communicate. But we emotionally react, they're emotionally reacting, and we get caught up in the story. So I just wanted to create some separation there because people sometimes don't get that. And they do get caught up in these stories.
Well, and to even go a level deeper, like I love where you're looking and what the distinction, even a different distinction would be truth versus fact, right? True, it could be true to you in the moment, but is it real? Is it a fact? You know, and a lot of times in coaching, we're trying to like find that separation by what we believe. If we believe it, it's true, right? Does it mean it's
both sides, negative and positive?
That's right. Yeah. So thank you for pointing out that distinction because I think that's important.
Yeah. So you're in this, you're learning this. There's another aspect of being an actor or a singer. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not really musically inclined in my perspective. I'm getting better. I got to change how I say this. It's not a muscle that I've exercised to become great at is singing. A lot of my siblings, almost all of them, have practiced and they're very good. That's not something I practiced for that arena, but I've practiced public speaking and I think I'm pretty good at that. Probably better than most of my family, not to say that they're not good, but it's my thing that I practiced. My wife, she's practiced for a long time as a classical, like choral singer. So she sings in choir. And so she has a different tone to her voice. And when she's singing solo songs or trying to cover other songs, she sings those songs as if she's in a choir voice, which it isn't bad singing, but it's not the way a soloist would sing.
Very different.
It's very different. That the vowels are different. The way everything's different. And so I've tried to communicate this like, well, it's not that I don't like your song. It's that you should sing the song different. I don't know how different, but one of the things you gain in acting and singing is you learn how to make your voice do a lot of different things, especially in Broadway, where it's got to be able to speak in different vernaculars, different accents, different vibratos, all these different things all have to happen in an acting and singing type scenario. So what did those things about learning the variations of how you can express sound, how did that impact your ability to communicate and have more empathy in the moment when it's needed for the people you're mentoring?
Awesome question. Yeah. Like the choral sound is meant to blend and to become one with other people, whereas solos are meant to be a solo expression of art. And yeah, like when you're singing a solo in a show or something, you have to, or you can pull on all your tools in the tool belt, right? We used to talk about like when you hit the big note at the end, to really express, you want to hold that straight tone until it feels a little uncomfortable and then go into vibrato. Because there's something about the tension that the audience feels that they hang on their seat and then you release them. That feels really good. And honestly, I don't even know how that relates to what I do now, but I do think that it's important to like have a fully fleshed out toolkit for whatever you're doing. And I think that relates to leadership, right? We touched on this earlier. Being able to pull out whatever quality and leader is needed in the moment to get the result that you need to pull out the best in those people or that team or the organization.
Well, so yeah, thank you. So one of the ways that I see it relating and why I think why I wanted to talk to you about it, as soon as you told me you were in this, I didn't know you were in this when I started to interview you, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Is something that I've learned about myself when I was memorizing my speeches or practicing my speeches, or when I was in sales calls and doing scripts, I would, and I did this with my team even, and they were all laughing. They're like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? But I would say, look, you got to learn to sing this script. You got to say this script with a golf ball in your mouth. You got to say this script as if you're a horse, as if you, whatever funny accent you can come up with. You've got to learn to say this in a lot of different ways. And the reason that I see a lot of value in it and what I've gained out of it from my own self is the more I can just be confident saying what I'm saying without worrying about what's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That energy has to be transferred into your entire body. And if you're focused on what's coming out of your mouth, whether you said the right word in the right order, in the right way, or if you change things up or whatever, if you're focused on that, you're missing out on the full body experience. And in turn, your clients are missing out on that. Now, we could talk about clients in form of clients paying customers, or maybe your client is your spouse. Maybe your client is your child. Anybody who's subscribing, as in putting themselves in a vicinity where your influence or leadership could affect them, anybody, which is everybody, anybody who's putting them in that situation, you're a leader to. And leadership doesn't matter if you're being vulnerable and soft and kind, or whether you're being commanding and assertive and whatever. It needs to be a full body experience, and learning how to act in confidence. And I say act intentionally because I don't always feel confident. There's a lot of time I don't feel confident. But guess what? Do you think anybody around me knows that? Nope.
Yeah.
Because I've learned to act confidently to accomplish my objective. And so I think that that's really important as you're developing leadership inside yourself and you're wondering, how can I become a better leader? Mastering your voice is a key element in that, because your voice is not just the sound. Well, it is the sound, but your voice is not just the words coming out of your mouth. The sound of your voice comes from every fiber of your being.
Comes from your intention. It comes from the spirit of what you're trying to communicate. It comes from, right, the belief in what you're communicating. And if you're thinking about, oh my God, I hope I really nail the middle section, or are they listening to me? Or are they going to buy? You're not really embodying and communicating, right? It's almost like the communication stops here. Mm-hmm. And so it's not going to resonate outside. So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, well, we definitely ran out of time. If you're still open to it, do you want to sing something? It would be cool.
No.
No. Okay, fine.
No. I mean, honestly, if I was still a singer, I haven't sung anything like since 2000 in 20 years.
That's
why when I went over to the other side, I went over to the other side, my friend.
That's awesome. Hey, well, I'm proud of you, and I think that's so cool. We didn't get through all of my questions. It's too bad, but we can have another recording. I honestly am open to that.
Yeah, me too.
It was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts, your talents, and what you've learned over the years about who you are, and more importantly, how you can help other people discover who they are. Because that, as you mentioned, it's about making a bigger impact. It's about helping more and more and more people. And there's a limit to your own time and your own effectiveness. And so you have to start enlisting other people in that vision. And it's cool that you're right there on the cusp of saying, hey, how do we help everybody join this crusade? And that's through, I forgot the name of your website, but
scalingminds.com.
Scalingminds.com. Awesome. Is that the best place to get a hold of you, or is social media, other places better?
So I'm really in two places. I'm on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find me, Andy Hite. And then, I do have some things on my website for your listeners if they're curious, right? If they go to scalingminds.com/ you are FYL, right? Fuel your leadership or legacy. Scalingmind.com/FYL. There's a couple of assessments there that can help you dial in like your leadership, your entrepreneurial journey. There's a ebook on authentic leadership, which is like my jam. How do we show up as who we are in our version? And then anybody that's like really curious about what I do, and wants to go deeper, like they can schedule some time with me and we'll do some coaching. There's a link on there. Let's dive deep and see what their legacy is all about.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm excited, and I appreciate really you being on here, showing up fully with all the intention and excitement. It goes a long way, and I really appreciate it. We'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.